The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Past Women in Technology webinar for September. I'm Kathy Kellenberger, and I'm co-leader of the Women in Tech group along with Irish. And our mission really is to encourage women in tech careers, either helping them get started in tech careers wherever we can, or just to support women that are already in tech careers, especially getting them started being involved with the community, for example, presenting, writing, things like that, things that'll take their career to the next level. If I can get my slide to advance. Today's session is specifically sponsored by Redgate. And I will be talking about one of the redgate products during this session. There will be 2 gift cards awarded today, drawn randomly from the attendees. You can find our videos on YouTube. So we typically record all the videos and post them within a day or so out on YouTube. You can find out more information about us from our homepage. And be sure to join our virtual group. You can do that from the past site, just with all the other virtual groups. And we send out a monthly newsletter. Probably bet many of you are already in that newsletter, and that's how you found out about today's presentation. You can also find us on Twitter and send us an email at witvc@sqlpass.org. We have some webinars coming up. We got today's. We have a webinar about Docker containers. So any of you DBAs out there, definitely check this one out. And we have some other sessions. One is ours, the Azure Databricks on November 21st. But we also promote sessions that women are giving through the other groups. So we see one from Ginger and also Jess in December. We like to promote women who are speaking at SQL Saturdays, and I'm really excited at the number of SQL Saturdays that have quite a few women speaking at. I want to kind of highlight Gabby and Aaron are doing pre-cons in Lisbon, and I believe that they're the only pre-cons available at that SQL Saturday. So it's pretty cool to have 2 women give those sessions. And again, there's just so many, I can't go through all of them. And you know, for example, look at how many are in Pittsburgh. That's just really great. I'm so excited. And we continue on. Several women are also giving pre-cons at Past Summit. So be sure to check those out if you're planning to go to Past Summit. My coworker, Kendra, is giving one on isolation levels. She's a fantastic speaker. Kimberly Tripp, just always an amazing speaker and such a wealth of knowledge. So be sure to check any of those out. And also there's more than 30 other regular sessions presented by women. So I have another member on board. I'm going to unmute her so she can go ahead and just introduce me, since I actually am the speaker. Let's see if I can. Oh, Catherine, can you go ahead and unmute, and then you can go ahead and do this last part.
Okay, thanks. Hi, I'm Kathy Jewett. Nice to see you all. Sorry I was late in arriving. Very excited to be a part of this group and learning so much from all the people involved here. Kathy is a SQL MVP who's had a lot of experience in these areas, and we can learn a lot from her. I've been in the technology area for 30 years and spent probably 15 of that in SQL Server, and I know Kathy has also. So we're really looking forward to seeing what we have to do in these webinars and learning a lot in the process. So Kathy, I'll leave it to you.
Okay, thanks. Go ahead and mute and then just come back on if there's any questions later on. For those of you who would like to ask a question as we go, please type your question in the question box, and I'll check in with Kathy as we go along to see if she has questions. So I'm going to close this one and open up another one. There we go. So I'm talking today about monitoring SQL Server. Here's my email address if anyone would like to get a hold of me or have any questions about what I talk about today. And I'm the editor of Simple Talk for Redgate. I want to bring up a really exciting event that Redgate has coming up. Many of you may have heard of Gene Kim before. He's the author of the Phoenix Project. The Phoenix Project is kind of a classic when it comes to DevOps, and I'm sure many of you have read it, and it's kind of a fun read as well. And you can register for that at the URL listed on the screen. So a little bit about me. I consider my primary purpose in life to be a lifetime learner. And I'm hearing some background noise. Catherine, could you go ahead and mute your microphone?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, now I've got two microphones showing up green. For some reason you've got two mics. I'm going to go ahead and mute one of them. Okay. So I'm a lifetime learner, and I have the weird thing that when I learn something, I have got to turn around and teach it to somebody else. So I also feel like I'm a teacher. I do teach at a nonprofit to help women get started in tech careers, and I really love that. I'm an author, Simple Talk editor. You can find me on Twitter at Aunt Kathy, or you can find my own personal blog, auntkathysql.com. So what I've found over the years is that there are 5 habits of DBAs that are overwhelmed in their job. And I see myself in a lot of these habits, especially when I was first starting out. Often DBAs will wait until the phone rings before they really know there's a problem. And when that phone rings, it's pretty rare that someone is going to be calling you to tell you that everything's going great. In my experience, they're more likely to call you when things are slow or they're getting errors. So, you know, that's one thing that happens a lot to overwhelm DBAs. They really don't know there's a problem until someone tells them. Some overwhelmed DBAs have so much on their plates. I had project work. I had to support do support in the application team with applications I didn't even know about. I had so many things. I know a lot of DBAs are in the same boat that I was, and sometimes you just can't get to issues that are small before they become big, just because you're again overwhelmed. This happened to me a lot. If something was going wrong, I would get on the web and just scramble to find scripts when things were going wrong. And I'm not really sure why I think it was partly learning. Then I just kind of saved those scripts as I went so I could save time later. Profiler, profiler, profiler. A lot of us are clinging to profiler. They have to take it out of our cold, dead hands, right? But it's something that a lot of DBAs still use I don't know when it's going to go away, but someday we may be surprised. And the number one habit of overwhelmed DBAs is restarting the server at the first sign of trouble. A lot of times it's not the DBA who does this. DBA may go out for lunch and come back and find out that someone else restarted the server because there was an error or something was slow. And that is really bad because it wipes out a lot of the metadata that might have helped you figure out what the problem was. There are also some habits of proactive DBAs. They resolve small issues before they become big problems. One example would be watching your data files to be on top of when a data growth is going to be needed so that those could be scheduled and done maybe on the weekend or a time when things are not so busy. Automate what you can. That saved my life when I was a DBA. My rule was if somebody asked me to do something twice, I'm probably going to find a way to automate it to save time and get more done. Standardize. This is kind of hard. I know that back in the day when I was a DBA, we also had Exchange on premises, and like every Exchange server was the same. There was no differences. So that team, they were busy because Exchange was a, big thing to support. But for me, all of my SQL servers were different. I had some with different collations. I had some that had different rules for what we were doing with security. Just all kinds of difference. If you can standardize, if that's possible, and it might be more possible in today's world of virtualization, that's going to save you some time and help you even bring new DBAs on more quickly. Document. Documenting whatever way works in your organization, run books. I worked for a law firm, so we had a document management system where every document had to be classified a certain way, and that made it easier to find. But whatever you do, document. I found the challenge was going back and revising documents whenever you did make tweaks. The number one habit of proactive DBAs is to monitor your SQL servers. That's going to help you with a lot of these things. There are some tools available that you can use to monitor SQL Server. For example, you might roll your own solution. That might keep you from having, your company pay an invoice for a product, but in the long run, it's going to be more expensive. And the reason for that is that you're going to be spending a ton of time. Imagine that there's companies out there that's their entire focus or the main focus, producing these tools. How do you think you can do as good a job as they do by yourself when you have all these other responsibilities? So it actually is taking a lot of time away from your other responsibilities. There are some things that will help you do this if you decide to go that route. Obviously, the DMVs are wonderful. Even if you have a monitoring tool, I don't recommend that you stop using those because those are going to, be helpful all the time. Perfmon, great to collect statistics on the server. Extended events, again, a wonderful tool. A lot of people, including myself, find a steep learning curve. One tool that I really like, you can go out and search for it, PAL. I believe it stands for performance of performance. No, let's see. I can't remember. Something about performance analytics of logs. So I can't remember exactly what it stands for. What you can do with that, it has templates. For example, for SQL Server, for other situations, you can use that to create a template for Perfmon. and then you can run the perfmon collection, then you bring that collection back into the PAL tool, and it creates some really cool reports with graphs, with information. If this metric looks bad, check out this other metric. If they're both bad, maybe this is a problem. If only one of them's bad, maybe it's this other thing. So it's pretty cool. And obviously, we have wonderful members of the community. For example, Brent Ozar, Glenn Berry, Adam Mechanic, Jonathan Cahias, Kimberly Tripp, on and on and on. People that provide really great information and have some wonderful scripts or tools available that you can use. I know Glenn Berry gets a lot of hits on his website, and for a while when I was doing consulting, I was probably his #1 person out there every day. I was out there every day finding scripts that I could use. The other option, instead of creating your own tools, because think about it, even if you collect all this information, somehow you're going to have to try to coordinate it, and then you're going to have to create reports, and then you're going to have to create possibly a dashboard to see everything together. It's so much work. But on the other hand, you could buy monitoring software. I'm partial to Redgate SQL Monitor. That's what I'm going to be showing today when I talk about the different areas. I have used SentryOne's back when I was doing consulting. I really liked it as well. But Redgate SQL Monitor I found is super easy to use and get set up, and it's now my favorite. So what are some of the advantages of monitoring software that you buy instead of create yourself? It's quick to set up. When I first downloaded SQL Monitor and set it up on a VM, I was surprised that within a minute it was starting to come up with alerts telling me things that were wrong about my instance that it was monitoring. I was really, really surprised at how quick it was useful. Best practices are built right in. And for example, looking for fragmentation of indexes, or just all kinds of things that are just automatically built in. And fortunately, you can configure. Is there something that you don't care about? You can turn that off, or you can turn it down. For example, if it keeps telling you that this read-only database hasn't been backed up, for a certain amount of time, you could say, hey, ignore that database. I don't care about backing it up. So that's another really cool thing, is that you can have all of these things to monitor, and you can control really what you want to be alerted about. And you can choose where those alerts should go. Do you want them to go to your phone? Do you want to just go to an email? Do you want it to go in SCOM, for example? Or do you want it to go in Slack? You could do all those things. There's also some built-in reports, and you can create your own. And that is really helpful. And for example, if you want to tell your manager or the CIO why you need more storage or why this is a problem, you want to show them some pictures, obviously. They're probably easier than giving them a spin around your monitoring software. It's really great to help you become proactive. You can see problems as they're starting to happen, or you can watch things over time. You can say that, 6 months ago, we hardly used any CPU on this server, and now we're up to consistently 50%. What's going on? And you can watch things like that. It's not a big problem right now, but is it going to be a big problem 6 months from now? Those types of things. Here's another great advantage of monitoring software instead of making your own. You can monitor multiple versions that are out there. typically at least as far back as 2008 or 2005. And if you had to do that yourself, what a headache, because some things become deprecated, some things are new. That would really be a pain to do it yourself. And with the companies that produce these, they stay on top of that for you. It also allows monitoring by non-administrators. So a lot of the things in SQL Server that you have to monitor, they have to give elevated rights. By just making someone a user in the monitoring software, they can see what's going on without even having access to the original SQL Server. So that's kind of a cool advantage. You can also monitor large SQL estates. So imagine that you have 40, 100, 400 SQL servers. How can you monitor those effectively in one view? And Redgate has recently released a new feature. Actually, I think it's still in preview, but you can download the software and use it to help you do that. Monitoring, in my mind anyway, really helps in these 4 areas. It helps you with understanding your physical resources and knowing if they are adequate or too much. I've seen that as well. Help you with configuration. You could actually come up with a preferred configuration on your SQL servers and be alerted whenever a SQL server doesn't have those particular configurations. Maintenance, for example, are jobs performing as they should? Did they fail? Have integrity checks been performed? Has index maintenance been performed? To me, that's a big part of a DBA's job. And then finally, last but not least, performance. That's what people typically think of when they think about monitoring. So for resources, you might care about CPU. This is a really weird area for me. I've done a lot of consulting work for small shops that either don't have a DBA or even sometimes don't have an IT staff. They're just relying on their hosting company. And when they see problems with SQL Server, the first knee-jerk reaction is to increase CPUs, whether or not the CPUs are even being utilized. So I've seen SQL servers that had more cores assigned than RAM. For example, I've seen SQL servers that have had maybe 24 cores assigned, but only 16 gigabytes of RAM. That's really kind of backwards, right? Memory. Again, a lot of times at these small shops, they don't understand how SQL Server uses memory. I've seen 2 terabyte database with 16 gigabytes of RAM assigned to the SQL Server. I've seen 100 gigabyte database with 6 gigabytes of RAM assigned to the machine. And part of course, yeah, there's query tuning and index tuning that needs done, but just increasing the memory really helped on these servers. Storage. Is the storage fast enough? Is the storage going to run out? Classification. So this deals with privacy. Do certain SQL servers have personally identifiable information? Is there a way that I can classify those SQL servers and pay more attention to them in my monitoring tool? And also version and patch numbers. I remember I used to have a spreadsheet where I would try to keep up with what all these SQL servers had. I had about 40 to monitor, 40 instances to monitor. Again, this is a big job, trying to keep up with all these updates. I did not let my SQL servers have updates automatically pushed to them, even though that was an option, because I really needed to do testing with the owners of the software at the organization to make sure that the patches didn't break anything. Okay, so let's jump over to the demo. This is, let's see, let me go over here. This is a SQL Monitor demo that you can go out and try yourself. This is actually going against some test SQL servers that we have at Redgate. So these are live SQL servers. There's a couple of them that are shut off. You can see right here. And you can try this yourself, monitor.red-gate.com. So the first thing I'd like to show you is actually a new feature that we've recently added, this new tab here called a state will take you, let's see, will take you to either installed versions or disk usage. And I have a feeling we're going to add some more tabs to this, other things that will be really helpful for DBAs. So what this installed version does is automatically goes out and checks all of the instances and reports back what product level they're at, and also gives you a link to the latest service pack or cumulative update. So this happens. Notice also we're monitoring Azure Database. This is also something that's in, I believe also in preview, but you can download and try it for yourself. So I really like this, that it automatically does that for you. You can also look at this disk usage page, and on the disk usage page, it's going to show me a view of when space is going to run out in all of the SQL servers that I'm monitoring. And the first thing it does is give you an overall view of all the SQL servers, but we can come down and look at the individual SQL servers. So it'll tell us, what it thinks is going to happen within a year, when it thinks it's going to be full. So I think this is really, really useful. A really quick glance at what's going on. You can sort, you can filter, and to me, it's really, really important to have this information well in advance, because, your manager and your SAN administrator are not going to be happy with you if you run to them on Friday and say, hey, I need disk space now, right? If you could have told them 2 months ago so they could provision storage if necessary and get it ready for you. So I love this feature. And this is the overall graph up here of when the current storage of everything is supposed to run out. Another thing I want to show you, if I go to this overviews page, you'll notice that there are different cards in each little section. So what you could do, and these are all customizable, what you could do to group these differently is, let's say there's certain ones that you need to pay more attention to, such as personally identifiable information. You could add a specific group and move the SQL servers over. And don't worry, I'm going to go in a little bit more into this tool as we go along. I just want to point out one other SQL feature. I mentioned that you could use this to even monitor more than 100 instances at once. And there is another little thing here you can do, display as small tiles. So if you did have hundreds, you could switch to that view, and that will make the view much smaller. I think I've heard that we have customers with up to 400 SQL servers being monitored. And if you have questions, be sure to pop them in the, and so I just noticed performance analysis of logs. Someone said the answer to that question I was trying to come up with earlier and what PALS stood for. I was kind of stumbling over that, so thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to switch back over to the slides. And get that running again. Okay, so we talked about resources and some of the things that you might look at, and I showed you a couple of those. Configuration. For example, at the instance level, how is TempDB configured? Are you getting contention in TempDB? When I was a consultant, this was low-hanging fruit for me because I rarely saw a TempDB configured properly. Microsoft has recently, in the last couple versions, made that better during the install with separate files and an increased size on TempDB, but it's still something you really need to watch. Is XP Command Shell enabled? You probably have a policy in your organization where that should be turned off. So there's typical things that you might be looking at the instance level and also at the database level. What's the recovery model? Do you have anything that's in a simple recovery model that you don't know about? Auto shrink, auto close, those are bad things to watch out for. I've had at least one situation where there was a database that for no obvious reason was having really poor performance. And when I looked at the properties, I saw that auto close was turned on. I don't know that anybody turned that on specifically. I think what happened was that was from an old version of SQL Express or the old, I think it was the old MSDE, I believe. I can hardly even remember now. That those old versions had auto close when you create a database there, and if that was migrated to a standard or enterprise edition, that setting would come along with it and cause problems. So let's take a look at some of the things you can do with configuration, and a lot of these are not necessarily built in by default in SQL Monitor, and I'm switching over to my local copy because that's the only way I can show you this. If you go to the configuration tab, there's a lot of settings that you can configure, turn on, turn off, turn down, whatever you want to do. But there's also this custom metrics capability. When you click that, it takes you to this page where you can create the custom metric. But to get you started creating them, I'm going to open that in a new tab. You go to our page, SQL Monitor Metrics, redgate.com. So what these are custom metrics that people, especially the friends of Redgate, have provided, or some of the internal people at Redgate, or just people who use SQL Monitor have provided. So I'm going to click on custom metrics, and there are a bunch of custom metrics that you can choose from. I'm going to click on best practice and see what I got. So I might be concerned with how many accounts have sysadmin login. Let's see, disabled backup jobs. I'm going to do a search for TempDB. I'll click all here and search for TempDB and look and see if there's anything that's going to help me with TempDB. So here's one on TempDB allocation contention. So all I have to do is click that and learn about the metric. It tells you all about it, what it means, what it's doing. And then if I'm happy with that, I can go ahead and click Install Metric and wait for a second for it to load. And I can modify this if I would like. And then I can decide if there are only certain instances that I want to collect it from. I can decide, I wouldn't want that to collect every minute. Maybe I'd want it to collect every day. And let's go ahead and click Next. And basically, let me change that to all databases. That doesn't matter. Actually, let's just make it temp DB and go ahead and modify the settings if I would like to, and finally create that metric. So I'm going to create that, and the cool thing is just keep this metric in mind because the tool treats this metric as it does any other metric in the system. It's not a second-class citizen here. And so let me go back to my SQL Server, and if I go to the reports, these are some reports that are built in. I can click to create a new report or just add another tile. And I'm just going to call this test. And there's two types of reports that you can create. One of them is an analysis graph, and it will actually show you any of the metrics you're interested in. If I scroll to the right area, there's my TempDB allocation contention. So I can go ahead and add that custom metric to a report. There's another type of report. So the way that the custom metrics work, it's basically a true-false answer that comes back. Is this a problem? Is this not a problem? There's a lot of other things that maybe don't lend itself quite so much to graphs. These are not customizable, at least that I've seen, but you can always submit a request to Redgate and ask, for those reports. So there's one of them, this one here. I requested that it be added and it's not, so this hasn't collected anything because I just got the monitor running on this SQL Server recently. It was in eval mode. My eval expired, but this basically shows you all the downtime and occurrences for your instances. And this is one that I requested. Sure enough, they got it into the product. So let me go ahead and switch back over to the slides. See, we talked about that. So another area is maintenance. This is a really, really important part of most DBA's jobs. We're going to be concerned about job status. Did the job fail? Did the job run long? Backups. I've actually requested more functionality about backups from the team. So I'm hoping that in a few months that they'll actually work on that and get it in the product. Index maintenance, another really important area, directly affects performance. Integrity checks keeps you from having to rewrite your resume all the time, making sure your databases are not corrupted, and taking care of it as soon as you find out. And also deployments. Do deployments, for example, pushing new code out, affect performance? So let's go ahead and jump over again. And I'm going to go in and let me go to this one here. I found that, I believe that this one right here is the one that's got some interesting things in the timeline. I'm going to move that over to make some more lines. So this is the timeline. We're looking at the 4 things that are really most important: CPU, memory, I/O, and waits. And I can turn those on or turn those off as I want. I can, and you'll notice that along this we have some yellow spots. Those signify alerts that have fired. So there we've got 189 alerts fired at one point. So there might be something I want to take another look at. You also might notice this little red symbol. So the products, several products integrate with SQL Monitor, and here I see that there was a deployment of new code at 5 a.m. Okay, so let's say I wanted to find out, let's say if right after that we started seeing some weird spikes that we didn't expect. What I could do, let's just turn off all of these other ones and I've just look at CPU. So let's say it really looks okay, but let's say, for example, that it didn't. What I could do then is create a baseline, and it would tell me if in the last 24 hours, the last 24-hour period, how did that look? So if for some reason things look odd, right after deployment, you can automatically bring up this baseline. Let's see. Here's another thing that we can do. I can zero in on certain areas. I'm going to talk more about that in the next demo, but what I wanted to do, and this one, is jump over to alerts, and I'm going to clear the filter, and then I'm going to show advanced filters, and I'm going to see if there's anything with jobs, job duration. So I'm going to select, clear everything out, and see if I can get that filter to run. So here's some information. For example, if a job duration is unusual, is taking longer than it typically does, or jobs failing, and I can click right in and get more information about any alert, about what's going on. I can also set up in the configuration area, there are, let me just go back to the filter just to show you some of the other things that we can look at. Let's say fragmentation of indexes. It looks at that. It looks at backups. Is a backup overdue? Is a log backup overdue? So those are the types of things that really affect DBA as far as maintenance. In addition, as I showed you on that other screen, where a deployment might make a difference. So let's go ahead and jump on over to the slides and talk about performance. So this is where any of your monitoring tools is really going to shine. This is where, this is probably 90% of the time why you want to buy a tool like this, because of performance. It's kind of funny. I heard a story the other day from one of my friends in the community that they were working with this report. They wanted it to run fast. They didn't care, but the team that was working on it was saying, hey, right now we're trying to make sure that the metrics are correct. We're tweaking it right now for that. And they were saying, we don't care. We want you to work on making it faster, not necessarily more accurate. So that was kind of a scary story to hear. One of the most important things that database administrators are going to be looking at are weights. Really, really important. What is a query waiting on? Sometimes there might be configuration changes. 9 times out of 10, query tuning is needed. What are the top queries that are causing problems at any particular time? Is there excessive blocking? It's kind of a pain if you don't have a tool to kind of figure out where that blocking originates. Deadlocks, another thing that's not much fun to figure out, but where a monitoring tool can really help you see what's going on. And also just look at patterns. Are things getting worse over time? Are there certain days of the month or days of the year or days of the week where performance is not as good? Is there something going on during those times? So let's jump over to the tool again. So if I go ahead and look at this one, and notice this has got a lot of information on this card. For example, this one is part of an AG group. So there are metrics specific for AG. It tells you the latest status and also a few of the important statistics right there. If you are administrator on the team, you can actually click that. You can dismiss alerts. So on this one, I'm just going in as a regular user. So I'm going to close that up and hopefully it will stay closed. So this is that timeline I showed you before. You can move the timeline and notice that we've got more information down here over time. And what I can do, let's say I'd be interested in understanding what's going on right during this peak of this. And so the rest of the screen will refresh to go with that little window. And you can make the window, you can drag it, make it bigger, smaller, whatever you'd like to do. So here I can, take a look at, memory, how much the VM host is taking, how much SQL Server is taking. That looks pretty steady. So doesn't look like, it looks like SQL Server is taking everything, and that's pretty typical. Here are the CPU, how things are looking. There is a CPU spike up to 100%. That's not good. There might be something going on with a bad query at that time. I also see that we can see either resource weights or signal weights having to do with the CPU. So we can see that things are not good with weights during that time. And there's also a lot of big I/O spike. So great. I know that something bad's happening, but what in the world is going on? So if I scroll down a little bit more, I see the top 10 queries that could be causing problems. And it'll tell me, for example, the duration, the CPU time, the physical reads, which that's not really a lot. Oh, the logical reads. That's where I want to look. The logical reads is what I care about. The logical writes and the database that it's happening in. So I can decide if it was just a one-off query, I might try to find out who did it and say, don't do that anymore. But here I can take a look at information. It's telling me, I can click to see the whole query. Let's see, I can view the query plan and download the query plan if I would like. If this ever loads, the other interesting thing about this is that it lets me click around to see whether I'm interested in CPU as expensive operations, or I can see all the warnings listed. So if I want to see where is that happening, that's where a lot of an expensive operation is. If I care more about the data heavy operations, I can click that. And I can download that if I would like to do so. Other interesting thing here, when I'm looking at this query, I can also find out what types of weights are attached to that. So it's waiting on I/O. So I saw that there was a really thick line in that query, so it looks like they are possibly doing a clustered index scan, and I could go see that, of a large table or something. Some reason there's a large I/O stream there, so I could, I here it again confirms that. And I can also look at the query history. If there was a yellow dot, that means that the plan has changed over time. So this tells me a little bit more about the history. And the other thing I might be interested in as far as weights on the SQL Server, there's also this tab here that if I click on it, it shows me the top weights on the server. Now, I know you've got that query that you got from Glenn Berry that you can go out and run. And, I love that query. But the cool thing about this is that it's specific to this little time. Now, you could do that as well. It's a little more work. But what you can also do, I don't care about backup IO. Let's look at this one. If I look at this particular weight type and scroll down, let me scroll down the page as well. It tells me some information about what I can do to resolve that issue, and then it tells me some of the queries that are affected by that. I really love this. I really, really love this. Instead of me saying, oh, look, there's a lot of IO weights. Well, here's a way that I can find out exactly what, and here's that same query again, find out exactly, which queries are causing that problem. Let me check my notes to see if there's anything else I wanted to show you. There's another, let me scroll down some more on this page. And there's a lot of the other metrics that you might care about, such as full scans, compilations. One of my favorites is page life expectancy. I have seen SQL servers, one or two reasons. Either they have some really bad queries that are running, or they just don't have enough RAM assigned to the machine. Again, that's those situations where they've got 6 gigs of RAM and a very active 100 gig database, or those types of situations where they don't really understand how SQL Server uses. I've seen page life expectancy in the teens, down here. If I want to understand more about that, a lot of the things in here, if you click on it, it will tell you more information about what that means. I don't see that here, or I'm just missing it. But a lot of the things that you do can do that. And now it seems like something's locked up. Oh. Let me go back. That's where you can tell. So if you go to the analysis, you can create a report on one or more metrics, and when you click on any particular metric, it tells you all about that metric and how you, what it means and how you might resolve that problem. So I knew that was in there somewhere. Okay, let me go to the alerts, and I'm going to look for, let me clear the filters, and I'm going to look for blocking. See if I can find a blocking process and just show you what that looks like. And also notice that a lot of these alerts are grouped. You can turn that on or off. This basically the same alert has fired 561 times, exactly identical. Instead of seeing that 561 times, it's grouped. So I'm going to click on that, and I get some information about the history, about what's gone on. I'm going to click in further. The cool thing I like about this is that it typically will show you the lead blocker, so you can go kill that blocker if you would like. And it's taken a little bit to load. There we go. Gives you information, everything else that was going on at the server at the same time. And if I'm trying to see exactly, I think it's on processes. I'm not seeing it. I know there's a really cool, I wonder if that's not turned on in this particular thing. Okay, sorry about that. I'm not lying to you. There really is a interesting graphic that you can get that shows you the kind of a tree of how the blocking worked. Well, you know, that's actually, maybe that's only in the blocking chain. So let me jump back over to the slides. One other thing I wanted to tell you about, we recently added a new feature to help you manage large estates, where you have a monitor in each location or in Azure or wherever you want, and then all of that information is gathered up. It is gathered up once it's collected in each place into a central monitor. And this is called our base monitor feature. So we have a base monitor in each location. I've also got several resources that you can take a look at, some of the things that I mentioned during this session. And otherwise, that's all I've got for you today. If you have any questions, please pop them up into the question box. We've got about 3 minutes before we're done. And also, I wanted to remind you that 2 people who attended today will receive $100 gift certificates. If you do win, you will receive an email from whitvc@sqlpass.org, or I think it's at whitvc@pass.org, letting you know you have won and what's going to happen. And again, all these slides will be, oops, wait a minute. All the slides will be out on the WIT group website. A link to the video will be out there. That should all be in place sometime tomorrow, probably. Okay, so, oh, I see something in chat. Okay, so thanks everyone for attending. I'm going to go ahead and close the session out. And I think the big thing I want to tell you today is, if you're a DBA, get a monitoring tool. I'd love it if it was SQL Monitor, but any of the great tools out there can really help you out. So long.